Against Empty Homes rally, jointly organised with Homes for All. We've got lots of speakers and live stream protests will be joining us during this hour. Each speaker is going to have 3 minutes and we're going to ensure that they stick to that time. I want to make 3 brief points before my co-host and our first speaker, Morag Gilly, joins us. First, we face a national empty homes crisis. Numbers have risen by 20% in the last year to well over 250,000. Empty homes can be found in council estates that are scheduled for demolition. They can be found in the new shiny flats we can see going up all around us. And we can also see them in the growing number of whole house Airbnbs. There are tens of thousands of these Airbnbs. I want to welcome campaigners from Hastings who are taking action on Airbnb because of the impact on their communities, and York, where campaigners are doing the same. There are also 250,000 second homes, many in desirable coastal and rural areas of the country, that are driving up rents beyond the pockets of working people. This is a national problem. It's a rural problem, it's an urban problem, and it's a coastal problem. Together, long-term empty homes and second homes add up to 500,000 houses without a permanent resident. And this is creating unaffordability in housing. Second, we know that the pandemic has laid bare the health crisis and the costs of housing inequality. This inequality was demonstrated again by none other than ITN News at 10, who've been running these reports over the summer, showing some of the absolutely disgraceful conditions that people are living in. The reports are gobsmacking and show something has gone badly wrong with the housing market that we have today. Third, we're in the middle of an environmental crisis. As the Royal Institute of British Architecture argued in September, we should stop knocking buildings down and retrofit instead. It's much better for the environment. Council estates should be retrofitted, long-term homes should be retrofitted. Together, they could lead a retrofitting revolution. So as somebody recently said, and I think they said it very articulately, and they summed up my thoughts about this issue: enough blah, blah, blah. It's really time to take action on empty homes. And with that, I'm going to hand over to my co-host, Morag Gilly from Homes for All, who is our first speaker. Morag.
In the public health emergency. Look at workers, disabled people, people on benefits. They're facing even more cuts to their incomes with increases in national insurance, cuts to the £20 uplift during COVID. And now the country has been plunged into fuel poverty. If we have a harsh winter this year, we are going to see hundreds of vulnerable people being unable to heat their homes. And let's be honest, some people could actually die because they can't afford to heat their homes. And yet the Tories continue to blame everybody else but themselves. But it's ordinary people who are paying the cost of these free market catastrophes, such as the fuel crisis. On top of that, I would argue it's not the fault of refugees. These are people fleeing famine, global wars, you know, just huge social crisis. And just like us, they want a better life. We are not to blame, and refugees are not to blame. Will's just shown there are hundreds of thousands of empty homes in this country that could be retrofitted, insulated, and they could, within months, help deal with the housing crisis in this country. But it's not just about empty housing, it's about the rent cap. We need a rent cap for private renters who are facing long-term poverty and housing insecurity. We want to see a stop to demolition. We want to see an end to the selling off of public land that's handed over to developers. We want an end to the cladding crisis where the burden is put on leaseholders. And by the way, look out on the website, there's a cladding activist day coming up on the 30th of October. And then finally, 4 years on, we still not have justice for Grenfell. It's absolutely shameful that people are still struggling. It's an absolute disgrace. But this is a fantastic lineup today. It's brilliant to see Jeremy Corbyn, the trade unions, housing and homeless groups really look into all the live streams that are coming. And I think for many of us who are involved in the housing campaign, this is a rallying call. It's a rally to build a united mass housing movement. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Morag. Thanks for that great introduction. I'm now going to hand over to John Bird, who has sent us this video supporting the campaign.
Hi, my name is John Bird, and I'm a supporter of the Empty Homes campaign. I think it's a real indication of the problems that we have now around homelessness. Behind all of it is this enormous amount of real estate which is not being used properly. And I would like to add my voice to the campaign that hopefully will lead to a much more sensible use of all of our land resources, and bringing those buildings that are now hundreds of thousands of buildings empty, while there are millions of people who are in housing shortage and many people who are unable to actually find anywhere to live. I've worked with homeless people for the last 30 years through the big issue, and I can honestly say that it's a crying shame that we still have not addressed the issue of empty homes. That issue was with us 30 years ago when we started the big issue. It has not been addressed, and we really do need to address it. So good luck. Let's have a good day of action, but let's keep empty homes very much in the foremost of our mind when we're talking about homelessness and a lack of use of our resources. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, John, and it's really great to hear from you. I'm now going on to our next speaker. Before we go to Southwark for a live stream, our next speaker, we're really pleased to have her with us. It's the new co-leader of the Green Party, Carla Denyer. Carla.
Good morning. I'm proud to support this event, standing up for renters and those facing homelessness and helping make housing accessible for all. Many of our big cities are becoming hollowed out, packed with luxury build-to-rent investment properties in newly developed city centre locations, standing empty while over 250,000 people were trapped in temporary and overcrowded accommodation at the height of the pandemic. Investors exploit the housing crisis at the expense of people on low and average incomes who are increasingly forced into poverty or forced out of the towns and cities they've always lived in by rising costs. As the Nobody's Home report by Action on Empty Homes points out, even schools are now closing in some places as roles fall in response to areas becoming too expensive for families on average incomes. A quarter of adults couldn't last more than a month without borrowing to pay their housing costs if they or their partner lost their job. 7 in 10 private renters say they would need to win the lottery to afford to buy a home. Part of the solution, I believe, is a living rent for all through rent controls and more secure tenancies for private renters. I also look to Berlin's recent referendum that supported expropriating and socialising large landlords. And part of the solution is bringing all of the long-term empty homes back into use, both private and social housing. Leaving homes empty is such a waste. In many cities, especially London, there's a political agenda of estate regeneration which often disregards the wishes of the people who live in them and does nothing to help the housing crisis, in fact, often making it worse. In January, my colleague, Green London Assembly member Shaun published a report showing that over 6,000 social rent homes in London have been lost due to demolition since 2003. If we want a real green recovery, sustainability, of course, has to be at the heart of it. The climate emergency demands refurbishment, not just demolition. In fact, we need a retrofitting revolution. Retrofitting long-term empty homes can bring them back into use, simultaneously tackling the housing crisis, fuel poverty, and the climate crisis. We've all seen the terrible spectacle of tens of thousands of litres of milk being poured away and healthy livestock culled while millions rely on food banks. These market failures are mirrored in the UK by the hundreds of thousands of empty homes while thousands more are homeless. The free market is simply unable to meet housing needs, as demonstrated by decades of house building alongside soaring living costs. The Green Party recognises that affordable, secure and comfortable accommodation is a basic human right, not an investment opportunity. thank you for having me on today, and I'm sending all my best wishes for the rest of the day's actions online and in person. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Carla. That's really, really appreciated. And it's great to see the Green Party getting behind this. And we look forward to campaigning with you in the future. Thanks very much. We're going to go to our first live stream now, and it's Southwark. So if we can bring Southwark in. Southwark, can you live stream? Thank you. There we are.
Yeah, we can. Thanks, Will. And welcome to Southwark and the Aylesbury estate. Southwark, where there's more than 16,000 people on the housing waiting list, and on this estate there are currently 600 water or heating, and there is infestation of rats and mice. Southwark, where in recent years thousands of council houses have been demolished on the Haygate estate and here on the Aylesbury. The Haygate had over 1,100 council houses and was sold by Southwark Council for nothing to a developer. A one-bed flat is on the market there for 640,000, and impossible for any of our class or any people in Southwark to afford that. As you can see, what we're doing is we're walking down this balcony, and there are all of these empty properties. This is just one floor of the Aylesbury estate. So what is Southwark Council's solution to the lack of housing here? Well, you can see on the front page of the local news, Southwark Cabinet Member for Housing is saying the only way to clear the waiting list is to infill on estates. What a load of rubbish and a lie. Let's think about what infill means. It means building on any little space they can find on our already densely populated estates. It means our estates taken away and play areas and building on these. This is in the middle with real uncertainty about the safety of these rooftop developments. Where these developments take place, and there are over 50 of these planned across Southwark, we'll be living on building sites for years with dust, pollution, noise, and a mental and physical health crisis for thousands of residents. But as you can see from today, we are fighting back. We believe the answer to reducing the housing waiting list is to fill the empty properties on this estate, refurbish and repopulate, don't demolish. Requisition the 6,000 homes in Southwark standing empty or not in use. Make the thousands of homes planned on the Old Kent Road. Make sure they're council homes, not luxury investments. This could house everyone on the waiting list. This is a brilliant day, brilliant lineup of speakers. Great to be here. If you haven't already, please join us in the fight back. Fill the empties. Let's make housing for people and not for profit. Repopulate the Aylesbury estate. 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 Right. No demolition without permission. No demolition without permission. No demolition.
Thank you very much, Southwark. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is from New York, actually. It's a video file saying that they want to support us and just talking about what's going on in New York. So over to New York.
Hello, I'm Glyn Robbins. I'm in New York City, where there's an estimated 20,000 empty homes. We're in front of two of them at the moment. I'm with Marika Diaz, who is a local housing campaigner. So, Marika, you're in the Bronx. What does it make you feel when you see these two buildings?
Honestly, I think this is just unacceptable. I mean, to have tens of thousands of units of housing vacant while we have many more tens of thousands of people homeless, in congregate shelters during a pandemic, sleeping in the streets. This is just a situation that's fundamentally unjust that we cannot allow to continue. I mean, here we have a building that has been vacant for as long as I've lived on this block, which has been over 6 years at this point. And there are, hundreds and hundreds of more like it.
And what do you think should be done about it?
Well, I think that really we need to socialise housing. We need to create a situation where private actors, landlords who are solely in it for profit, are no longer in control of who does and doesn't get housing, and no longer in control of what happens to the housing that we have.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Marika.
Thank you.
I'll just show people the buildings. I think that's a wrap.
That is a wrap. And thank you very much for that report from New York. The next speaker I'm bringing in is Roger Lewis, who's going to be speaking for disabled people against cuts. Roger, you're on.
Yeah, hi there, and thanks everybody. My apologies that Ellen Clifford from Disabled People Against Cuts, Deepak, was due to speak to you today, but she's not able to, so you're putting up with me instead. Thank you very much. This is a really extraordinary and important event happening today. For those of you who don't know, as Disabled People Against Cuts, we've been active for the last decade, representing the attacks of this government on disabled people over welfare benefits. But also, part of that, obviously, we've been intricately involved in housing campaigns, from the introduction of the bedroom tax through to all of the benefit issues that affect our the people we represent. So we stand in solidarity with all of you today, not just on the fight about empty homes, but the fight about affordable homes, the fight about accessible homes. And these things all link together. And we need to show, as we've just been hearing from Southwark, I'm living in Lambeth here, so neighbouring to Southwark, and we have our regeneration schemes going on in Cressington Gardens, in Central Hill, council housing, affordable housing being sold off to the private sector again and again, with little concern given to those who actually live in the areas we represent. So it's amazing that we're doing this around the country, because it's not a local issue. It's a general issue, it's a national issue, and it's linked to the whole issue of sustainability of accommodation and accessible housing, that we need to move back. I'm old enough to remember, I'm 60 years old, just coming up, and I grew up in the council housing generation, where you had accessible, affordable housing. Then we had, from Margaret Thatcher, the sell-off of council housing, and not just here. We've heard from New York that happened with Reaganism as well, which was the policy that it's about what you earn is what you can get, and that's what we need to be fighting about. So we need to unite all of these struggles, and particularly at the moment, because of course not just we've had the 10 years of austerity since 10 years ago, but we've had COVID on top. And that means that we have, with people who are out of work, and this is particularly poignant to people with disabilities, which is that we're out of work, we're not in employment, we're reliant on universal credit. And we've now had a government which has cut universal credit by £20 a month, £2,000 a year for anyone who's not able to work, through either exclusion from work or because they're not able to access it. That then links into their housing possibilities and their housing accommodation. And it's a choice. It's a simple choice between, can we pay the rent or can we put food on the table? That's the government we're looking under. When Boris Johnson in Manchester at the Tory Party conference has been talking about we're now living in a high wage economy, you realise how out of touch, how completely out of touch these people are from the reality of the majority of people that their policies relate to. We can't sustain this anymore. We need to build these campaigns. And that's why the Empty Homes campaign is so important, because as I said at the beginning, because it links to the general issue about housing, about cladding, about sustainable housing, about accommodation that's affordable, that's about accessible housing for the people who need it. But it's also about wages and employment and sustainable communities and everything else that we're dealing with. And that's the message that we need to do. That's why what we're doing here today is so important. Solidarity to these amazing demonstrations that are happening around the country. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the live streams. And let's build on here today and go on and forward and tell this government we are not putting up with this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roger. Thank you for that. That's really appreciated, that message of support. It should be said, of course, that when you're retrofitting long-term empty homes, you should be retrofitting them so they're accessible for as many people as possible. So that gives us a real opportunity to retrofit those long-term empty homes, council estates, so they're fully accessible for people who need full accessibility. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to our friends in Hammersmith. We're a bit early, Hammersmith, so I hope you're ready for us. I'm going to add you to the stream.
Hello, it's Emma Code, councillor and former MP. We're standing on Kensington Road, right in the middle of Kensington, outside one of my bugbears, 1 Kensington Road. Used to be a 700-bed hotel, which fed High Street Kent. It's now a block of 97 super luxury flats, some of which have never been sold, apparently. Most of which I never lived in. I've only ever seen 4 flats with lights on, 4 out of 97. I think that's absolutely despicable. It's despicable because the council allowed this. It's despicable because the law allows this. And given the number of homeless people we have in the borough, it should not be allowed. There should be laws against it. There should be something that we can do. I'm not saying we should compulsorily purchase these, but the obscenity of having empty homes when we have people living in a pretty appalling temporary accommodation outside the borough, losing all their family connections, it's just shocking. Even worse is that all the way down this road, from 375 Kent High Street, all the way down to 1 Hyde Park, there are super luxury homes which are partially empty, owned by overseas owners, so they can't be contacted. People don't live them as sort of time, and people who do don't give anything to the local business or the local community, whatever. This is not what this borough is about. We don't need it. We should look after people. Kensington is better than that. The council and the government need to do better. They need to tackle this and not just wring their hands in woe. They have laws to do this. They have to implement those and stop breaching their own policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Housing is a human
Thank you very
Housing is a human right. Fill empty homes. Housing is a human right. Fill empty homes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hammersmith. That was fantastic. Thank you. I'm going now to bring in our next speaker, and needs no introduction, I think. Our next speaker is Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy.
Thank you, Will. Thank you for inviting me on today, and thank you everyone that's on this call. And I think what's just come from Hammersmith is absolutely brilliant. Housing is a human right. That surely has to be the basis of everything within our society. There are, at the moment, probably nearly 300,000 empty homes across the country. There are at least 100,000 people living in unsafe temporary accommodation, unsafe in the sense they have no security of tenure. And there are many thousands of people living rough or somewhere near rough. That is the reality of modern Britain. Now, councils do have the power to levy a 300% council tax on empty homes. I think they should all do that. But that really isn't enough, because the problem we have in our housing at the present time is that it is dominated by speculation. It is dominated by people making money out of the housing shortage. Councils that want to build homes, like my own does, Islington, and they've done very well on building council homes. Their problem is they don't get full funding for it. They only can do it by balancing the books on each site, which means that we don't get 100% social housing on every new development. We get somewhere less than that, including some private development that goes with it. There has to be greater powers given to local authorities to build as well as to buy on the open market, and to buy back places that were sold under right to buy. I think right to buy should end. I think we should be moving into an era of tough rent controls and permanent tenancies in the private rented sector as well. The issue of empty homes around the country is a standing disgrace. If you look across the southwest of England, where there are many second homes, those second homes are occupied for a few weeks or a couple of months per year. Their presence leads to a loss of schools, a loss of shops, a loss of community life in those villages. Across London, it is often very big, very expensive homes that are deliberately left empty as investments. I think they should be, if they're being deliberately left empty, taken over and redistributed to those in desperate housing need. The market is not going to solve the housing crisis that affects this country. It is only empowering public authorities and local authorities to deal with it that will do that. There is also an environmental issue here, that some of those empty homes are not in very good state. They need to be refurbished. They need to be repurposed. Refurbishing older properties, retrofitting, putting in good quality insulation in them can be done, and is a much more efficient and environmentally sustainable way of dealing with new, rather than new build, which obviously has huge carbon footprints that go with it. And so I just finish with these points. We need a serious building program all across the country, a serious building program to build housing for those that desperately need it. The price of not doing so is borne by families living in short stay, sometimes bed and breakfast accommodation, sometimes hostel accommodation. That has a mental health impact on them. It has damaging effects on children's achievements in school, and those that are living in insecure private rented and frequently have to move often seriously underachieve in school because they're moving schools the whole time. If we had a government that seriously cared about the life chances and living standards of all of the population rather than the wealthiest minority, we would, as a matter of national endeavour, be tackling the housing crisis. It has to be done. The power of protest, the power of people on the streets, the power of campaigns like this can and will change things. My full support to all those campaigning all over the country today. Well done, Big Issue. Well done, Unite. Well done, everybody that's got involved in this campaign today. Let's take it forward, not just one day of action on empty homes, all the year round. And where we could start with all of us making a demand of our local authorities, go and look at the empty homes in your borough. In my borough's case, there are apparently 649. Challenge the owners of those places, and if need be, take legal action to bring them into use. When you see people sleeping on the streets outside a deliberately speculatively kept empty property, it is immoral, it is wrong, and it's got to change. Thank you very much, Will.
Thank you, Jeremy, for that contribution. That's brilliant. I will now like to go on to our next speaker. I have a speaker for us who's called Irfan. Irfan is a refugee from Iran. He wants to speak about the issues that he and many other refugees face, particularly around housing. He would like to remain anonymous for obvious reasons. Irfan is a former refugee resident of the Napier Army Barracks in Kent. Irfan, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I was held in Napier Barracks for 4 months, a prison-like accommodation which was housing 400 asylum seekers in total, 28 people in each block sharing 2 toilets and 2 showers while there was a pandemic going on. The camp was filled with vulnerable asylum seekers who had been through terrible things, yet their basic needs, decency and dignity was being harmed there. 28 people sleeping in a block, and they were only separated by a wooden partition which was open from the top, an accommodation so unhygienic which made half of the people become ill with COVID-19, including me. So many people were infected with scabies, and in one case, TB. After 4 months of leaving us uninformed and not responding to our questions and complaints, people's mental health deteriorated significantly. I witnessed 4 suicide attempts myself, people so desperate who had had enough and couldn't bear anymore. However, there was no mental health support for those who needed it the most. It wasn't a detention center, but we all hoped we could be in one. At least the prisoners had a private, clean and decent place to stay, but we were being neglected and disrespected. The story of terrible asylum accommodations isn't limited to army camps. Asylum seekers who have been moved to shared houses reported of filthy, molded accommodations that had so many broken things. In one case, a family of 4, including parents and 2 children, one of them an infant, showed me a video of water leaking from the toilet upstairs in the kitchen downstairs. The house wasn't cleaned or the broken things weren't fixed when the family moved in. The mother was dealing with OCD and had to shave her head because filthy water was always leaking from the toilet on her. They were kept 4 months in that house, which was, by the way, filled with rats and bugs. The private company which was running the accommodation accused them of lying to the Home Office, and them being powerless and voiceless couldn't save them and their infant child as soon as possible. People, especially asylum seekers, are stuck in a broken system which makes them unable to defend their rights and dignity. They are in fear of being victimized, and the Home Office deliberately makes the environment hostile for them, so they cannot secure their well-being. The process of dehumanizing them is so long and tormenting that their mental health and self-confidence crush without noticing that these are human beings and they are loved and valued by other people in their lives. The fact that these people will eventually enter the society and disrespecting them has effects on other communities of this country is often forgotten. I really hope one day having access to a decent accommodation to live and respecting each other without considering the immigration status, color of the skin and nationality become necessary in the eyes of our policymakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Irfan. That's really, really appreciated. I think it goes without saying, we're living in a country with 500,000 properties without permanent residents. There is enough space to get people out of temporary accommodation and to welcome refugees and migrants and the housing that they need. I think that goes without saying. Before we go on to Southend Fossett's campaign, I just want to give a shout out to all of the people, all the organisations that are backing this campaign, and you can see them here. I'll read them out. You can see them behind me. It's Ourselves Action on Empty Homes, Defend Council Housing, DPAC, Fuel Poverty Action, Greater Manchester Housing Action, Homes for All, Labour Homelessness Campaign, The Big Issue, Radical Housing Network, Renters' Rights London, Social Housing Action Campaign, Peace and Justice Project, People Before Profit, Streets Kitchen, Street Storage, Yes to Fair Development, Unite Community and Unite the Union. So I really want to say thank you to all of those organisations for getting behind this project and this campaign. I'm now going to go to Fossett's in Southend, and Fossett's, you're now live.
Thank you. Hello, my name's Martin Berry. I'm one of the organisers of the Fossett's for the People campaign for public housing to be built on some empty public land here in Southend-on-Sea in Essex. We've all seen the national figures today and before, and it's absolutely appalling that so many people have nowhere to live while so many houses are empty. Here in Southend, we've got a council that's trying to improve things, or at least stop them from getting worse. The joint Labour, Lib Dem and Independent administration here has a carrot and stick empty homes policy to encourage owners to sell. The stick part is charging up to 300% extra council tax on the empty homes. But the trouble is, many of the owners can afford that. It's small beer for them compared to how much and how quickly the house values are rising on their long-term plans. So despite the council's strategy, we still have around 600 homes empty for 2 years or more. And those could be lived in by the families on the housing waiting list, getting them out the unsuitable and unaffordable cramped places that they're stuck in. Unless those empty homeowners act willingly, which isn't happening, government action is very much needed. Our council here doesn't own much land, hardly any at all, so any council house building is done piecemeal when it can be, and is very, very small scale. But something we do have here, and many councils have the same thing, is some empty government-controlled land that's already publicly owned. Here, it's formerly our hospital's land at Fossett's Farm that's currently with government agency Homes England. The government is refusing to transfer that to our willing council to build social housing. Instead, they want to sell it to the highest private bidder for big houses local people can't afford. Our two local Conservative MPs are supporting the government in that. The plans are for 131 executive houses. We could build 3 times that number of decent and sustainable social homes that could cut the housing waiting list by about a third at a stroke. That's homes for key workers, and we all know from recent experience what's key. It's absolutely crazy that NHS workers can't afford houses that the government is planning to build on that former NHS land. Nationally, of 131,000 homes scheduled to be built on sold off public land, only 27,000 actually have been. The rest of that is just land banking by the private developers. Just 15% of those sales are any type of affordable, and we all know that affordable is a very loose definition indeed. And only 3,400 of a social rent. So it's 3,400 social houses out of 131,000 on sold off public land. There is a better way. Keep public land in public hands for public worker homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fossett. Thank you for that, and good luck with your campaign.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next speaker is John Glackin from Street's Kitchen. Over to you, John.
Hi, and thank you for including us as part of this amazing day of events and people coming together to very simply just raise the profile and look at empty buildings. I mean, we operate across London in 13 different locations. I mean, last night we were in Dalston, we were in Camden, we were in Archway, we were in Kilburn this morning, we were out around Camden, and 70 people on the streets. This is from 7 o'clock in the morning. I mean, we're seeing more and more people on the streets, more and more services that aren't available to people on the streets. And we keep passing empty buildings. We keep passing buildings that immediately, if we took those buildings, we could put people in and save their lives. And it's very crucial that we do this because, I mean, for example, on the 5th of November, we're going to be coming together to remember those who passed away on the streets of London and across the country. I mean, in 2019, 710 people died on the streets of England. In 2020, 976 people died. And the simple reason all these people died, the thing they had in common was they died in the streets, they were homeless, they died without that permanent address. And there's hundreds of thousands of buildings lying empty. We should take immediately, let's take them. It does help that we have all councils aren't created equal, and that's certainly the case in London. I mean, we've got councils that are very into regentrification, trying to kill the communities, trying to really create an atmosphere that only the wealthy can survive in these areas. The local community has to be pushed out. So we need to, as Jeremy said, work with some councils and highlight these empty homes because people are dying on the streets. The one thing COVID did show us, that with the right will, there is an answer. The hotels were put into action. And that wasn't given. That was local groups campaigning very quickly on the ground to push the government to open up empty hotel rooms for people to sleep in. There's so many empty buildings. The solution is there. Let's grab it. I mean, there's so many of us here together, and it's beautiful to see it. And there's so many amazing groups across London who are out raising the profile, who are campaigning, who are out feeding people, who are out cracking squats, who are opening buildings. There's so many of us that we need to come together. So, I mean, we stand in solidarity with you, and let's hope we can actually bring an end to this travesty of homelessness, because it is a political will. There is no other reason for it. It is a political decision made. We have to profit out of homes. So thank you for including us, and let's keep this fight going. Let's work together. It's beautiful to see, and solidarity with everybody. It's great to see so many local campaigns here today, and we're very proud to be part of this. So thank you, and solidarity to everybody.
Thank you very much, John. That's really appreciated, and it's great to work alongside your organisation in dealing with this issue. I'm going to now take us to Millbank. I'm going to add Millbank to the stream. And are you ready, Millbank?
Millbank Tower, which is now owned by the second richest family in Britain. A tower which could be repurposed to provide community housing to stop families being forced out of Westminster. Instead, planning permission has been given to convert this into more luxury flats, more luxury restaurants and a small luxury hotel, which will become like so many of the towns along the river down here, empty luxury flats. Down the river, we have an alternative model. The Oxo Tower in the late 80s was redeveloped to provide a co-op housing, buildings, community housing, businesses and a restaurant. Instead, we have more luxury housing. Worse than that, zero affordable housing, which should cost the developers 57 million. The local council has let them off 55 million. So it's more cash in the pockets of private developers. This matters on a number of levels. All these developments that take place across London, we are told need to take place because of people in temporary housing. The reality is most of the developments take place for the profits of the developers. The people in temporary housing never get a sight of the inside of those buildings. More than this, and probably more important now, we stand in the midst of a climate emergency where the built environment and construction accounts for 40% of CO2 emissions. In this situation, what we do with these properties matters more than ever. We can't just keep building more and more properties for developers. We have to look at the buildings we have to house the people who need them now. And we need to do that with environmentally sound buildings, where the priority is the people and the planet. So we say, homes for people, not for profit. 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 Homes for people, not for profit.
Brilliant. Thank you very much from Millbank. What a great process. Absolutely excellent. Thanks very much. Okay, our next, I'm going to roll video now from our next speaker. It's a message from Berlin, where they've recently had a big success in terms of defeating people trying to, basically speculators trying to own properties in Berlin. I'll let them speak for themselves. It's a really good video.
From Berlin, we are the two leaders of the Right to the City for All working group inside the Deutsche Wohnen & Co. Enteignen campaign. Our campaign just won a referendum to expropriate all profit-oriented corporate landlords who own more than 3,000 apartments in Berlin. And we won.
Yay! So we're very happy to be part of the same movement to stop financial speculation over a basic right, which is housing. So we're here cheering for you. All the best. 5, 6, 7, 8. Housing is a right for everybody. No discrimination. We speak every language. We shape our cities, caring for each other. Fight by our side. Come join the party. Woo! Yes! Woo!
I think that's a fantastic example of what happens when you win. And if when we're going to win this campaign, we're going to go out there and do that kind of thing, I think. Okay, I'm going to bring in now Islington. We're going to bring them in early. So Islington, I'm going to add you to the live stream and take it away. You're on mute. Debbie, you're on mute. Okay. Go, 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 go. I think we're going to have to leave a little while until they get their volume sorted out.
Will,
Hooray,
you told
we
me.
have you.
Yeah,
You're
but you said
live.
you wouldn't.
You're live.
We are live, but we weren't coming on till 11:56, and we're still waiting for Dermot to come. So could we keep it the order as it was?
You're the last one.
No. Sorry.
You're the last one. You're live.
Okay. All right. I'll find someone else to speak. Anyway, so this is our action here in Islington. We're on live now, folks. Who would like to speak about what's going on here? Dermot's not here. So Una, our councillor, is going to speak about what's going on here.
Hello everyone, we're down here at this site which has been sold to private developers left for years and years when there's a big need for social housing. So these people, whoever owns this, need to get their act together and give us some homes for our residents. This is a disgrace that it's all about money and the highest bidder. Islington has a strict policy with planning and this needs to go to planning. This is a definite change of use. So come on and I join everybody today here that stand here and all these other sites when we've got such a homeless problem and such housing, so many people on our housing list waiting for properties. So do the right thing, tackle this now and write to the government and say enough is enough. Give us our places back. This needs to be for social housing, if not half the social housing.
Yay! Thank you. Public land for people. Public land for people.
Public land for people. Public land for people. Public land for people. Public land for people. Public land for people. Public land for people. Public land for people.
Thank you. Sorry about the delay.
No, don't worry. That was brilliant. Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody for Islington. Great protest. Okay, see you soon.
All right, see you later. See you later.
Right, bye-bye. Okay, that's fantastic. That was really fantastic. We got there in the end. Oh, and Ruth London is our next speaker. Ruth is going to be speaking about fuel poverty action and their support for our campaign. Are you with us, Ruth? Fire away, you're live.
Yes, I am.
You're live. Can you speak now, Ruth?
I certainly can. I'm really delighted to be here. You all may have heard from Fuel Poverty Action in this energy price crisis, where millions more people are terrified that they won't be able to heat their homes. Or you may have heard about our campaigns on housing and heating, or cladding, or the crowdfunder we've just launched. But here I just want to make one point: retrofit empty homes. We first got involved with Action on Empty Homes when we were responding to a government consultation on improving energy efficiency in the private rented sector, because homes let out by private landlords are often the coldest, the dampest, in the worst repair, and they often need major building work and new heating systems, retrofits, before they're fit to live in. And thousands of people die from cold homes every winter, 10,000 or more, and it will be more thousands with fuel prices rising and also with the changing climate. But we're being told that you can't make private landlords spend anything significant on bringing their homes up to a reasonable standard. Why? Because they'll go on strike. They'll leave the rental market and leave more people homeless. They'll switch to Airbnb, or they'll leave their properties totally empty, like a buy-to-rot investment bond. That's the argument, that landlords have us over a barrel because they own the buildings we need, so they can't be forced to insulate. But this argument depends on state collaboration. It wouldn't apply if owners were not allowed to leave homes empty, and it also wouldn't apply if they were forced, when homes are empty, to do a deep retrofit. Because in fact, when you think about it, the very best time for a deep retrofit is when a home is empty. We all desperately need good insulation and heating, both for the sake of the climate and to prevent fuel poverty. But insulation is not always simple. It has to be non-flammable. It has to be non-toxic. It has to protect ventilation so it doesn't lead to damp. And it has to be done in a way that is accountable to the people who live there and is not disruptive, for example, to young families or people who are disabled or ill, or people who are old, or simply couldn't cope with living on a building site, even for the period while the work's done. Some disruption is inevitable, but sometimes it can just be too much. So if a government was serious about climate change and serious about fuel poverty, they would be seizing on all these hundreds of thousands of empty properties and refurbishing, not demolishing homes. Landlords with empty homes should be required, while they're empty, to have them brought up to top standard in energy efficiency. And then, when they're nice and warm and made fully accessible, they can be used for people to decant into while their own homes are being repaired and insulated, street by street, until all these homes are put to use as permanent homes. Like everything else we need these days, it sounds impossible, but how much more impossible is it to go on the way we are now? Thank you very much. It's a wonderful day, and I'm very glad to support this and be here.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Ruth, for that message. And thank you for changing your slot. And thank you to all of those people who changed their time slots at the last minute because we had one or two technical difficulties with live streams and speakers. Everybody kind of did really well, especially Islington, actually, who responded at the very last minute. So I just want to say a couple of things. I'm going to hand over to Morag Gilly, who's going to wrap up. But just before that, I just want to make it clear that Steve Turner was due to speak today, but there was a technical of Unite, but there was a technical problem. We just couldn't get him. This happens sometimes. And also, when I was talking about the list of sponsors earlier, I should, of course, mention the Green Party. I missed them out. So apologies to the Green Party. We're very pleased to have you on board. And Morag, I'm going to hand over to you to say a few words now. And you're on mute, so you need to unmute.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much. Well, just to say thanks, it's been a brilliant day. Sorry we missed Emmett Ward. His wife's just given birth, so I think he's sticking to a very tight schedule. But what I'd like to just quickly mention, that's 29 empty ex-prison warden flats in Islington that have been left. These are 3 and 4 bed empty flats, been lying empty for years and years. The Ministry of Justice promised to hand them the lease over to Islington Council, pulled out at the last minute saying no, they've got a better deal from developers. So we are still fighting them on that. And well done to all the Labour councillors as well who've been really supporting the local Islington Homes for All. Just to finish, it's been fantastic. Just to urge everybody to get involved. There is the Claddon climate activity on the 30th of October. We will be having, look on the websites because we will be having another meeting. We're having the Homes for All, and that will be followed by the campaign against empty homes. I haven't got the date off the top of my head, but that's going to be after the COP26 demonstration. So let's build a mass united housing movement. Thanks, Will.
Thank you very much, Morag, and thanks for your support in organising today, because you played a fantastic role in bringing everything together. Thanks to everyone who supported this rally and who's supporting the Day of Action. Thanks to our speakers, our live streamers, thanks to our international guests who sent us videos. Over the next 6 months, we aim to build this campaign across the country. Empty homes, buy to leave, empty speculation, Airbnbs can be found in urban, rural, and coastal areas. So that is where this campaign should be seen as well. Thanks to all of you who've taken part, and goodbye.